Brock Yates and Steve Evans are set to call all the action for you, and from time to time, we'll bring you highlights from last year's racing. But right now, Brock and Steve are down at the track, so let's go to them.
Well, Ed, it may not be the wing of a B1 or the Concorde, but by drag racing standards, it's mighty impressive. And without the downforce of that airfoil, and even with these great big tires, there's no way a top fuel dragster would get any traction in the quarter of a mile at 260 miles an hour. They just have that much horsepower. Some people say 3,000. Qualifying so far has been pretty close to form. Gary Beck, the world record holder, is #1. Joe Amato is arch rival for the world championship, #2. If you want a little bit of a dark horse, don't forget Gary Ormsby from California. He's been the #1 qualifier at the past 2 races and won the opening race of the year, the Winter Nationals. This could be a good bet. Shirley Muldowney is in the 8th spot, still in the top half of the field. Her crew frantically trying to find a 10th or 10th and a half to run with the guys like Ormsby, Beck, and Amato. The other classes of competition today? Well, let's join Brock Yates and have a look.
Thanks, Steve. I know they're on a roll in top fuel, but let's not forget this iron, the funny cars. This one belongs to Frank Hawley, the reigning world champion. He's had some problems earlier in the season, but he may be on a roll here at Columbus. And the snake, Don Prudhomme, he's had some problems as well, but he's running strong here. And so is another old pro, Raymond Beadle. The pro stocks, Bob Glidden, who can forget him? 5 victories in a row here at the Spring Nationals. He's running very strong. Lee Shepard, always a winner. He's the world champion. And Warren Johnson has got top speed here at the meet. So the pro stock competition, wild and woolly as always. The funny cars, who can predict? But we got 3 great veterans in the competition.
Miles an hour. Of course, Beck running all out, shooting for lane choice. And in funny car eliminator, Billy Meyer of Waco, Texas, who has won the last 2 events on the circuit. We saw him win the Cajun Nationals, went up against John Force of Fullerton, California. And Force had a bit of a surprise here for Billy Meyer.
He sure did, because John Force was definitely the underdog in this particular race, but Force just drove by Billy Meyer in the last half of track and took a victory at 6:06, 242 miles an hour. A fine victory. Steve talked to him about it.
Anytime you can get around the hottest car on the circuit, the #1 qualifier, Billy Meyer, John Force, you got to be awfully pleased.
Tell you, we did it at Pomona. We got around Bernstein, #1 qualifier. We did it at Gainesville, and then Baton Rouge. I started getting that red light syndrome deal, and enough that it even changed my car. Last week at Bristol, the car wasn't running right. I found out that I was driving into the car and making it run different. The ETs fell way off. I told Frazier, I'm going back to beating that throttle. If I give him a red light, I'll take the embarrassment. Paid off here.
It certainly did in big. Going into round 2 is John Force.
And there goes the engine, the electric starter hooked up to the blower drive that kicks over that monster 500 cubic inch nitro burning V8 engine behind Connie Kalitta.
And he better have a lot of nitro in the tank, because his competition here in round #2, the low qualifier, the world champion, Gary Beck of Hemet, California.
Well, we said earlier that Beck has won about everything there is to win in this sport, in addition to shattering records virtually every place he runs.
Now, by virtue of his 5.63 on that bye run we saw in the first round, Gary Beck has lane choice. He has selected that far lane, Brock, that he's burning out in right now. But according to the drivers I've talked to, they really, at this point anyway, see no imbalance in the lane.
Well, let's not forget, though, Steve, that lane that Gary Beck is in is the one we saw Kenny Bernstein go up and smoke in a little bit earlier. So it's possible, and especially when you got 3,000 horsepower to play with.
Well, the consensus on Bernstein was just too much too soon. Look how fast Gary Beck backs up, wanting to keep those tires from cooling off, Brock.
He does everything according to a plan. He's so exact in the way he goes racing.
Well, he is the total drag racer, driver, engineer, you name it, Beck can do it. Much like Connie Kalitta, he has done it all in the sport of drag racing from Ypsilanti, Michigan, where he operates a professional flying service. Gary Beck recently moved from El Toro to Hemet, California, to be closer to the race car shop owned by Larry Miner, the team captain.
And a very effective one as well, a man that also handles the top fuel car pretty well in his second season.
And you just saw the second burnout of Gary Beck, which is now part of that starting line ritual. First, the long smoky burnout to lay down some rubber to heat up the tires, the track. Then that second burnout, which gives the driver some indication of starting line conditions. Connie Kalitta adjusting his gear in the cockpit. He's ready. Gary Beck is ready. This could be a good one.
It sure could. A couple of seasoned professionals. You can't fault these guys for inexperience, that's for sure, as Kalitta slides up against that electronically controlled trickle tree.
Kalitta tried to pull a hole shot, but the Christmas tree caught him in the act. A red light on the tree for Kalitta. He is disqualified. Doesn't matter anyway. Gary Beck at 569, 245 miles an hour wins it.
Problems.
Shirley would be on her way to the hospital right now if it were not for her commitment to this sport and this race. Gary Ormsby is out first. Shirley Muldowney trying to gun him down, but not today. Joe Amato was right. Gary Ormsby does advance into the semifinals at 5:65, a nice elapsed time, and a good speed of 247 miles an hour.
An excellent run for Gary Ormsby. In fact, 4/100ths of a second.
Thank you.
Well, that is encouraging news about Doug Kerhulis, and we hope his recovery continues as we get ready for some funny car action, and that is John Force, Steve Evans, and a real force in funny car competition at this point.
Yes, he is, but talk about a force. How about Don Prudhomme, the winningest funny car driver of all time, 4 world championships to his credit. And Brock, I feel that these are the most violent race cars in all the world of motorsports.
And the noisiest and most spectacular as well, Steve. I only wish the people at home could smell these things. They had some kind of smell-o-vision. The nitro fumes will just bring tears to your eyes.
John Force of Fullerton, California, is one of the toughest individuals, mentally and physically, that I've ever met. And this is Force's idol. Don Prudhomme, they call him the Snake. Granada Hills, California. That is a Pontiac Firebird. Well, a replica of a Pontiac Firebird.
Has won world championships in both funny cars and Top Fuel. The only man ever to do that, and one of the singly most successful race drivers in history in all kinds of motorsports.
And these cars are just a bear to drive, Brock. They shake and they rattle. They sometimes even roll. Of course, fire, the biggest danger with the engine in the front-mounted location. The only thing separating the driver from that engine is a thin aluminum firewall.
And also, Steve, don't forget, these guys don't carry either tape decks or air conditionings in these things. Don't forget John Force. He knocked off Billy Meyer, who was on a big hot streak.
And John Force, in our interview earlier, said that he'd risk a red light if that's what it took to get by the competition today.
Well, no red light, and a good start, but John Force comes to a halt early in the going, and Don Prudhomme makes a strong pass, 599, 212, to take that race. John Force broke earlier in the going, and that was the end of it for him. Unfortunate for John Force, but he is through for the day here at Columbus. As for Don Prudhomme, a 599, a pretty good ET, low top.
To expose the sport of drag racing, to encourage youngsters not to street race, to do it on NHRA sanctioned drag strip. Just a fine all-around guy. And so, of course, is Tom McEwen of Fountain Valley, California. If he's not racing his funny car in a quarter of a mile, you'll find him in SoCal at Los Alamitos Racetrack racing his horses in a quarter of a mile.
It's all 1,320 feet, no matter how you cut it with a McEwen. One of the real veterans and one of the best-known racing personalities in the United States. Survey after survey reveals that everybody's heard of the Mongoose.
And a very glib guy, Brock. An excellent interview. He'll often go to the timing tower and work with the PA announcer and entertain the crowd. Just a terrific guy.
Frank Hawley runs for Austin Coyle out of the Chicago area, also one of the great fixtures in drag racing. Relatively independently financed operation, Steve, as compared to some of the other high-buck operations.
That's right. They exist on what they win.
And they win a lot with Frank Hawley inside that machine. Hawley, very good with the lights, generally a very consistent race driver, not prone to mistakes.
Austin Coyle has had 11 drivers in the long line of Chi-Town Hustler automobiles. He tells me that Frank is the best of the lot because he can do things down the racetrack. He has just a magic quality with that throttle foot to keep those tires from spinning.
Yeah, you'll very seldom see Hawley get the car sideways, have to go up and smoke, red light it, and do all the mistakes that you do in one of these things.
But right now he's behind Tom McEwen and not catching up. It is Tom McEwen enjoying his finest season of performance in a long time. 592 for the Mongoose at 249 miles an hour. He can go quicker than that, I think.